Happy Wednesday, wherever you are on this phenomenal planet. Woo, there's some lighting to this camera. Hello. Welcome. I'm so pumped about today's episode because it's so needed. I'm hearing the horror story. So of course, you know me. I've got to bring the tea. So we'll be I did caption this trigger warning because some of you've experienced this, especially when I've consulted with people. I share the stories and say, hey, heads up, you know me, right? Heads up, look out for this. And then people start to share their stories. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is scary. So again, um, trigger warning, especially because we're going to be talking about our senior community, our elders, our disabled folks, in terms of when we're at that point in life. All right, Bomo says greetings from Chicagoland. Hello. Liam says hello, how are you? I'm fantastic. I'm through the roof. Make sure you check in, say hi, say hello, let me know where you're from. Press 1 lets me know you're here. Press 2 lets me know you shared it. All right, so of course make sure you are subscribed, turn on that notification bell so you catch us on the live 11 a.m. Of course, if I'm not doing an inspection, I'm not, running to and from escrow or property, but we are committed to be live on Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific time. I am based in SoCal, Southern California, Cali girl. That's why those of you who are new to me would be able to connect with me at lasuperagent. That's my handle on all your favorite social media platforms. All right. Good stuff today. By the way, I'm going to be on the radio on Saturday. I'll be on, let's see, I might have to download. I'll find it somewhere. But I'll be on the radio, KBLA 1580 AM. I am a featured guest on the Talk Tech to Me show hosted by Cassie Bett. So if you want to hear the radio style, right? Live radio style, I'll be on the airwaves again. It's always great to be on the airwaves. When I used to do the tour and I was kind of visiting different places and we were talking about real estate literacy. Hey, Michaela, great seeing you. When we were doing the tour and doing the real estate literacy empowerment, and I was on different radio stations, that was really fun for me, like to get on the radio. It's always fun. So I'm really excited to be on the radio on Saturday, of course, and doing this information that I do as well. All right, let's talk about writing down those goals. Listen, where are we right now? We're in October. It's official. It's October 12th. In fact, I'm going to date the show, right? So it's October 12th. Write down your goals. We are already towards the end of 2022, towards the end of the fiscal year. And so if you haven't written your goals already, guess what? It's not too late. You can still jump on board. I have just added some new goals. I think I haven't really shared. I've shared snippets of one of the goals I'm working on. So of course the paperwork came back. I'm working on expanding the brokerage. So one of the paperwork came back from the state, the Bureau of Real Estate for that state. And I messed up. I did not include the cashier's check. I wrote a business check. Duh. All right. So follow those instructions when you're doing this kind of stuff. And that was just me being excited. And I just was pushing against a deadline because I only have 60 days to get in my background check paperwork. And it was so close. And so I messed that up. It came back and they were like, by the way, make sure your background check is not, is within the 60 days of, us receiving it. So the good news is I got my background check yesterday and I will stick that in the mail. And so, woohoo, in about 2 or 3 weeks, we should have our brokerage license. It's called reciprocal. So we'll have the brokerage license and reciprocated in another state. It's just something that was on my goal for a couple of years. And I just felt now's the time more than ever to do it. So I've shared my goal. If you're, happy to share, listen, drop it down in the chat. This is a community here where we're building and supporting each other. And accountability is key. So I'm here for you. All right. Okay. Before we jump into today's segment, because we will be talking about episode 180, Can Grandpa's Caregiver inherit his house or his entire portfolio of property? Oh, don't say it's so, Lisa. Yes, it is so. So, of course, the answer is going to be yes, but we're going to talk about how does that come about. We will be discussing the dark side. So I did say trigger warning for those of you who may have experienced this. No way, in any way, shape, or form, am I trying to bring back traumatic events. I'm wanting to just make sure that we are aware of what's going on, what's out here. Richard says, hello, I'm a new subscriber. Hello, Richard. Welcome, welcome. Great seeing you. Thanks for joining us. Love it when everybody's catching us on the live. Again, if you do miss us and you're on the replay, hashtag replay. If you have questions, you all had great questions last week when we talked about rent hacking, when rent hacking goes bust, especially because we're at a time with COVID protections. And if you're in a state that's pro-tenant, it's going to be pretty hard to recover. See, being here in California, our protections and LA County specifically voted to end that February, which essentially would be like March 2023. And then there's like this fine line or fine print that says the tenants under that protection now also have 12 months after the emergency order ends to repay any back rents. So it's a pretty involved process. And then you have people in there that are trying to use COVID to not pay rent and that whole thing. It gets messy with the courts and all that stuff. Robert says, great live. Thanks. I'm here for you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right. So let's talk about disclaimers, because I said we are going to talk on a topic and I wanted to revisit this. It's called TOD. Drop that in the chat below. TOD, transfer on death deeds. Transfer on death deeds. TODs. Of course, the information on this show is not meant to be legal or tax advice. Please consult those legal, reputable, licensed professionals. Again, who? Reputable, licensed professionals, because in all industries, there's you get your bad apples. And unfortunately, you don't find out you're with a bad apple until it goes left and sour and you're like burnt after the fact. Unfortunately, I'm hearing that, I'm seeing it. Those of you who are new to me, I'm an advocate. I am a real estate advocate. I'm a real estate literacy advocate. In fact, I wanted to address this. I might talk about this on the radio this Saturday as we talk about this game of ownership, right? Real estate ownership, because people are like on this big push of real estate ownership. But is anyone following Anne Heche's estate, this battle with her son and her ex-boyfriend over her estate? I read something very interesting this morning as her son is petitioning to be administrator over her estate. And he says that he petitioned and believed that the value of her estate is about $400,000, which would include some, bank accounts, liquid accounts, and had no real property because he said his mother, Anne Heche, did not believe in owning real estate. So I felt like that's a worthy topic, because there's different school of thoughts to that, right? Most folks don't realize when you're jumping into ownership, you should be factoring in 5% of your purchase price towards maintenance, those capital expenditures and the oopsies and I didn't know I'd have to replace a roof and that whole thing. So what's your thought on that, right? We'll just kind of build on that. I just thought that was really interesting because as opposed to other people, celebrities and folks that pass on, they usually have a portfolio. And so this was one that really came to my attention. I've been following it, and I've been following a couple of the estates and different things because we can learn from this stuff. You go, oh my gosh, this is what happened, right? So, all right. Before we jump into that, questions, comments, feedback from last week, did we want to recapture? If not, we'll continue. If you have any topic suggestions, I know there was a topic suggestion last week about choosing your investment location. I'm putting that one together, so we'll bring it to the show about choosing your investment location. So I'm happy to do that segment, especially, and here's a little bit about that, especially when you're talking about, let's see, if you're in a premium state, right? Real estate is really prime, very, and expensive is a relative word, expensive to whom? And so prime real estate, the numbers are pretty high, price point. I guess the best way to say this is it's the price per square feet is relatively higher than other states. Aha, there we go. It's a nice cleanup. Price per square feet relatively higher than other states. And so with that, I feel like, we've got to be careful when we're jumping to other states because we're wanting to pick up property and may not have the team to manage it, right? Or you're just really not aware of the community, the neighborhood, the city's plans for that particular city. Do they have plans for that particular city, right? We want to make sure our investment strategy works with the exit strategy that we are planning for ourselves personally, right? Your exit strategy is going to be different from anyone else, all right? Or from everyone else. All right, good stuff here. Let's see. I'm going to take a sip here and bring on our slide. Of course, we do have a show sponsor. Let me bring slides up. So classroom style today, by the way, we will do, yay, classroom style. Classroom style, which means I've got a whole PowerPoint for today, and I'm going to bring that up. And we'll jump right into that after our sponsor break. All right, we'll be right back, you guys. Sit tight.
We know how challenging it can be to try and sell a home while also dealing with other financial and legal matters. We're here to help. Devenio Estates is the real estate firm you need to make sure your unique situation is handled as quickly and efficiently as possible. Our team of professionals has a combined experience of over 30 years in real estate, construction, and finance industries. As active professionals in the industry, we know the importance of timelines and pride ourselves in providing superior service without compromising integrity. We use industry software and copyrighted proposals so that our real estate agents submit accurate and complete listing information and buyer offers. Our goal is to exceed your expectations and set Devenio Estates as the go-to real estate firm for excellence in advocacy and superior services for our clients. Contact us today to learn more about our services.
Little shameless plug. That's our brokerage, separate from the show. So, of course, today's sponsor of today's episode, Myra says, hi, Myra. She says, wonderful advice for those on the journey to help members of their family. I'm glad. I'm here for this. This is genuinely, I'm here for this. And what is the price of admission? If you are new to the show, price for all this free real estate game, the price of admission is not free 99, but in fact, letting me know you're here. You press 1 in the chat. I love having the chat all fired up. And 2, lets me know you shared it. Of course, if I drop a real estate gem, something that was nugget worthy, give me a mic drop so that we can highlight that as well. Because sometimes I go in and I'm like speaking of different concepts and, techniques and tips. And I'm pouring into you. I'm loving on you. And then you might be like, oh my gosh, that was so golden. I'm here for you. Real quick, just a reminder, my name's Lisa Gillett. Welcome, also known as Super Agent. Yes, by the way, I used to do that in character, live in character. We wrote the book Real Estate 100, the teen home buying experience, did a spinoff called the Teen and Millennial Investment Blueprint, and also doing another spinoff of that called the Teen and Millennial Land Developer. Like, my dream is to create the Harry Potter series for real estate books for youth and young adults. Because when I wanted to pick my career, if you remember 9th grade, like when you were a freshman, 8th grade or 9th grade, you started high school and they said, okay, what do you want to be? And then you had to pick the top. You had to pick that field. At least this was my experience. I feel like everyone had this experience. Most had this experience. And you had to choose your career and then do research. I recall going in that class. It was in a class and there was like, a bookshelf with a whole bunch of books with career choices. And there wasn't any in particular specific about real estate, although when I was 11, in the back of my mind, this was something I thought was pretty cool. And I was like, huh. And so, life would have it that years, decades later, I would jump into it. And more so, that involved starting off as a notary public as my first foot in the game, then a salesperson, then real estate broker. And then I've shared with you, I'm 2 years in law school, pursuing to be a real estate attorney. I've got goals. See, these are my goals. That's what I'm saying. Write this stuff down. So I am a active professional, meaning 10 toes to the ground. I'm in the field. I'm actually doing this work. In between shows, I'm taking a phone call. I'm negotiating deals. I'm showing properties, inspections, training. In fact, I just got a call to come on and do a training for an organization that just created their own grant program. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this. I'm going to learn more Saturday. If this is good stuff, we'll bring it to the show, because what they're using grant money for is to buy down the interest rates. I like this so far. I like this. Thumbs up for this. I like this. Creating avenues for those who want to get their foot in the door, but these rates are kind of like doing what they're going to do. They're projecting they'll be 7, 8%. The big plan is what I was hearing. It's supposed to be at like 8% in 3 years. I mean, we're at like what, 6.7, something like that, depending who your lender is, because the lenders do their overlays. We'll talk more about overlays throughout the show. I've always discussed overlays. This is why if one lender says no, go to another lender. They have different overlays. Don't give up if they close the door on you, right? Some lenders are going to be very black and white. They're going to want to, everything has to look perfect and FICO and look good on paper. But if you go to other lenders, mortgage bankers or mortgage professionals, they have different overlays and guidelines that might be best suited for you, for your situation. All right. Good stuff. Where my heart is near and dear as a seniors real estate specialist. That means I just have training. I hold that designation to work with the senior community. And so this is why I want to talk about this today, because the more I work with this group and this community, the more I'm seeing and hearing the horror story. So we'll jump right into this. This topic today will touch along probate a little bit and something called the Medi-Cal Recovery Program. But I can do a whole segment on that as it relates to real estate. So I'm going to split that topic into a show for next week. So we're going to almost do this as a 2-part, okay? Let's jump into this. Chat, write down in your notes. We're going to talk about TOD today. So TODs. What I would like for you to do, because you are chiming in from various states and places, thank you very much. TOD. Oh, shout out to those of you who are streaming on ERGJ Enterprise Facebook page and group. Thank you those for your continued love and support. And TOD, I want you to write this down. I want you to throw this in Google. What states use, so we can do the quotes, so you can, it should come up as the top on Google. But if it doesn't, I want you to do it like this. I want you to use the air quotes, open quote, end quote, air quotes. What states use TOD? All right. There's 18 states, California being one of them. So I can speak from California in this perspective of what our guidelines are. This is really cool. This is a really cool document or tool to transfer real property to the next family member without doing a living trust. Now, am I an advocate of not having it? No. I think you should do your living trust. And be careful not to create more of a mess when you're making your living trust. So again, seek, legal advice and professional advice when you're doing this kind of stuff. But this document here has been renewed. It actually was up on the legislation for whether it was going to be renewed or not. And so we talked about this in the past. I wanted to revisit this again, especially as we're watching a couple things. 1 of every 3 seniors are diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. We're seeing more and more properties falling into default with reverse mortgages. We'll talk about that. Again, now I feel like, so you see how I build these series? Now I feel like I'm going to be on a 3-part series. Talk about reverse mortgages. Talk about Medi-Cal recovery. There's so much involved with real estate. And when we talk about passing it on to our heirs, what are the proper steps to take in order to accomplish that? So again, I do want you to take the time and for wherever you are, find out if you can use the TOD deeds. Banks have their own form, right? The transfer on death beneficiary forms for bank accounts. That way you don't have to probate a bank account, someone's bank account. It'll just go to whom that person designates as their beneficiary. So I do want you to take the time to do that. What state uses TODs? And just as a reminder as well, we are on episode 180. So we're going to be talking about, can Grandpa's caregiver inherit his house? Who's the caregiver? Where did the caregiver come from? Right? And let me just give you some context. Let me give you some context. Sips tea, right? Let me give you some context. I was out in the field this past week, and as I do what I do, I'm, connecting with folks personally. Yes, I'm that type of person. I'm an out in the field agent, because the people who need the information oftentimes are not on the internet. So we do a couple of things in terms of our own marketing strategies and campaigns, and just connecting our business as a resource to the people that we serve is getting out there, right, physically. And so and this is why I said we've got to talk about TODs again, because so here's the story that came by way of a CNA. In fact, he was a home health aide. He's a home health aide. And as I was discussing about, making sure your estate planning affairs are in order if you're a property owner, and unbeknownst to me, he says, you know what? That is so good that you are out here saying this and at least, telling people to do this. He says, because I'm a home health aide. And he said, I'm brought in, from time to time for a couple hours. I do my home visits with the person that is getting the benefits of, home health care, or home care, home care. And home care can happen in various forms. So it can either start off at they're in a nursing home or nursing facility, and then they're either transferred, back home if they're, determined to be hospice with a terminal illness, and ultimately will be passing away. And so he was telling me about this story about how the nursing facility employs social workers who continually does the visits with the patient being the owner who owns real estate, might be his primary home, and does the visit with the patient homeowner, and encourages them to sign over their property to the nursing facility so that it pays the debt being incurred for services with home and community services provided by the nursing facility. This is why I said I'm going to do this in 2-part, because this might be new information for you. How Medi-Cal recovery program work. If you have a senior or a family member who's receiving Medi-Cal benefits for services of long-term care, that's what we're talking about. LTC in conjunction with dealing with TODs, transfer of death deeds. All right. Heavy topics today. Yes, heavy topics. That's why I said trigger warning, because a lot of you have loved ones that you care for. I am so glad you're here listening to this information, because if they own property, you don't have the resources to do the living trust, then this may be available in your state. And while they are living, they're competent, they can designate their beneficiary. In fact, if you don't know this, I bet some of the caregivers with who are have malintent, right, ill intent to recover benefits from that patient owner for themselves. We've seen it. We've heard it, right? Next thing you know, grandpa passes away and he had property, bank accounts, and a car. And the caregiver ended up getting all of this. What? How? How is this possible? Well, me being a notary public, when I've had to notarize certain documents that deal with estate planning, I had been called in on one occasion when the patient owner was on his deathbed. Sad, sad thing. This was a couple years ago. This was about 8 years ago. Fortunately, I haven't been brought into a situation like that. A couple years ago, I'm a notary public. And so I was called in to the private home. It was a private home residence that provided long-term care for people, seniors or disabled persons. And when they called me in, I believe it was one of the daughters who called me in. And so when I came in to visit, he was essentially on his deathbed. He was completely out of it. I mean, you could see, I think he had IV hooked up to him, and he had a nurse there that was just on watch, if he woke up, if he needed anything, just kind of monitoring his vitals. Michael says, this is exactly what I needed to hear today. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. My heart is being filled because at least, I don't fall on deaf ears, but I know, I trust that it doesn't. At least if I just can touch one pair of ears, or, or live, someone who's listening, right, or reading, because of course, I'm noticing there's a big movement with ADA as well. So I'm glad for captions for those who are reading this and following along with this information. Very needed. So thanks, Michael, for letting us know you are finding value. So I come in as a notary public, and I said, well, he's sleeping. I can't notarize these. He can't sign. I need him to sign, and he has to sign my book, and I have to take a thumbprint. He's not in that position right now to do it. And I said, I can wait a few minutes. I can stick around for 20 minutes because I wanted to help. Me not knowing, I was called in, and I'm genuinely wanting to help. Of course, I don't know his condition. I don't know if he's sleeping or if he's like on his way to, like if they said, hey, this is it, he's in his last hour or hours. I didn't know that. I was not privy to that information. So me wanting to extend myself and just make myself available, I said, I can stick around for another 15, 20 minutes. If he wakes up, great. I'll speak with him and we can get these documents signed. And she was adamant. She pushed the issue. And what really was concerning was the body language of the nurse that kind of was like, heads up, right? Like, because even though we're talking about caregivers, we're also talking about loved ones, right? People who don't have the best interest of the person that is going through this, who has ownership of property and accounts and, cars, etc., right? They have a portfolio. That's their estate, by the way. Most people feel like, well, it's just real estate. No, the estate is what that person owns, what makes up, their portfolio. So in any case, how I handled that, as the daughter was adamant, and this is what really just gave me chills. She grabbed his hand and she said, what if he signs like this? Can he just sign your book like this? And she's doing this, puppet master. And I just was like, oh my gosh. I said, absolutely not. And on that moment, I said, when he wakes up, you can call me. I will make myself available. If he wakes up, if it's 7:00 tonight, if it's 9, 10, you're close enough in the area that I can drive back and I'll come and perform the notarization. And it's very scary to know that in this business, because I've had cases, in fact, I had one that just settled with a client where her family member disinherited her interest by way of deed fraud. It's called a quiet title action, by the way, when you want to recover your ownership interests. Again, uh, heavy topics today. I know it's just heavy topics, but it's called a quiet title action, is what the legal term is when you are looking to retain or recover your ownership interests in a property. So in that case, we had to do a quiet title action, a quiet title lawsuit against the estate so that she could recover her 50% interest in her mother's home. This was the home she grew up in. So I say that to say, this is why I feel like we need to revisit this conversation about transfer on death deeds. All right. So yes, it does avoid probate. It's effective January 1st, 2022. There are new changes, those new changes being that you now have to notify the heirs. And I like this change. Why? Is because it's no longer like a secret that this document gets signed by the owner and saying, I'm designating, to my grandchild, my grandson, right? My granddaughter. And this again is in the event that they are sole owner on the property, not if they're married with joint tenancy, community property, or some other vesting called tenancy in common. This is sole owner, which we see for the most part of those who've owned property from the 1960s, because that's what I'm seeing coming up on the records with these probate properties. Probate are the properties that are now having to be overseen through court. They go through a court proceeding to then convey title. And that's what probate is, by the way, with real estate, when real estate is involved or the real property, is to convey title to a new owner. The court oversees that process, and there is no court confirmation. And with court confirmation, again, you see how I'm building on the series. Like that would be, I'm already at a 4-part with this context here. I'm 4 parts already talking about probates. We'll get into it though. So with this transfer death deed, you will need this to be witnessed, two witnesses, and you cannot, and I'm speaking to my attorney colleagues who I work with on another matter that has come up. And so the will had been signed, but not witnessed. And so we're talking about different ways of how this could happen. There's this thing called the Harmless Error Doctrine, whole bunch of, meat here. But in any case, let's just stick to the immediate guidelines. What's really cool is that if you go to the Secretary of State for your state, your county recorders, they would have this form and they will have instructions on how to use it, how to properly do it. Now, here's the thing. If you mess up a step, it will be dismissed. It will not work. It just will not work. And you'll end up in probate. So make sure you follow the rules. Get some help with this. 2 witnesses must sign, now sign effective with the new changes, the California TOD deed. Not sure about the other states, okay, but definitely follow along with what they require. The beneficiary, the person receiving the benefit of the property, should not be a witness. Conflict of interest. It is required to be signed, notarized, and dated. Again, this is where I said as a notary, I had come into a situation, and as a notary, wanting to make sure that I'm confirming that the signer is competent, cognizant, and understands, right? Is alert and is not under duress. Because if I notice as a notary, if I notice that the signer is under any of those, I should refuse notarizing that document. If the person ends up if the person signs, by the way, and hey, that someone had them under duress, they were forced, and the notary didn't catch it and still notarized it, you can potentially challenge that, okay? Again, seek legal advice about your situation. And then you have to record it in the county recorder's office 60 days within the notarization date. I like this. I like this because that means you're not holding on to it as a secret. No one knows that this person just gifted you this property, right? Now you have to notify the heirs within 60 days. You have to record it and notify the heirs and say, hey, Grandpa just named me as beneficiary to his property, and you all should know. Okay. So I like this because now it becomes a topic of conversation that we're aware. The key changes are the beneficiary is required to notify the owner's heirs upon the owner's death. All right. The heirs have, I like this part too. Again, this is protecting the intent. If it was a true intent and this person is competent and all, everything checks off and the intent is true for this person to receive this benefit, again, in the event of a caregiver, right? Caregiver slides over some paperwork and says, sign this right here. Next thing you know, they're inheriting the property. The heirs have 120 days to challenge the transfer. Excuse my typo. They have 120 days. I'm going to have a pop quiz on the end, and I'm going to do a giveaway. You have a choice of the Ready, Set, Real Estate mug or the Ready, Set, Real Estate hat, black, white, red, blue. We've got a whole collection of hats. So I'm doing a giveaway. Stick around for the end because I'm pop quiz you. Heirs have 120 days to challenge the transfer. Liens or deeds, by the way, if there's a mortgage, in the event there's a reverse mortgage, and they are valid if they are recorded, of course. Liens or deeds are valid if recorded no later than 120 days. Usually these properties have an existing lien. It's going to be valid. Okay. The beneficiary is obligated to settle the estate debts, meaning you, the caregiver, you, family member, whomever is now the beneficiary, it is your responsibility to communicate with those creditors, lien holders, that you are the successor in interest and that you are looking to settle those debts, right? Pay off the mortgage. It's a whole nother conversation. Again, see, I'm on part 5 about assuming mortgages, and you can, as a family member, if the loan stipulates that it can be assumed. So we can talk more about that. See, part 5. Jeez, TODs. I'm already on part 5. We'll get here, and I'm going to remember to write my notes on that. So we'll talk about Medi-Cal recovery. We'll talk about probate. We'll talk about assumable loans. In this case, when someone passes on, can you assume the loan? Yes, you can. Especially, can you imagine, like, if they have a great interest rate and it's a decent payment? I was assisting with a senior client of mine who inherited his mother's property. He was the successor trustee. So he's the last successor trustee. And he wanted to be able to assume the loan. And we found out it would be best in his scenario. He could assume the loan. However, we found it was best to get him a VA loan. The rate was better. Everything just worked out better. And so, yes, we've done it. It can be done. All right. TOD deeds executed before January 1st, 2032 are valid. So this is what I want to point out, because they only make this, I'm noticing, 10 years at a time. It is only this law available to us all that says we can use TODs to transfer real estate. Could you imagine? It's a beneficiary designation form that you get to assign your beneficiary. It's only valid for until 2032, January 1st, 2032. So at any time between now and then that you utilize this, it will be valid as long as you follow the proper steps. Here's what I want to say about that. Also, just like when it came out in 2006 is what I want to say. It came out in 2006 originally, or 2011. Don't quote me. But what we're seeing with the legislation is they're renewing. Sunsets, they renew it, and they continue it. The reason why this is made available, naturally, any thoughts? Why are they saying that, you know what? We should allow people to just designate a beneficiary before they die. Why? Why would the state say, let's allow them to utilize the form and follow a process to achieve transferring their real property to their designated beneficiary. Why would they do that? Why would they make that allowed? That's not the pop quiz, by the way. Yeah, you guessed it. You're thinking of it. It's to avoid overwhelming the courts with probate cases. I mean, if you've ever gone down to your court recorder, your court, local court, I do. There's a list of cases that are going through probate. And for those of you who are wanting to or interested in purchasing, like that's a whole nother business and real estate game. Go down to the court, follow the list. They have it posted. Find out who's the administrator, find out who's named, find out who's petitioning for the estate. You can work with a real estate professional because you'll want to find out what liens are recorded against that property. So you know what, at minimum, what the payoff needs to be, right? You can then do some homework on how much equity is left and whatnot, and learn what the intent of the family is. Are they looking to retain the property, qualify for a loan, or do they need a private loan? And I'm noticing there's a lot of folks using private money. So if you've got a SEP IRA, you've got your retirement accounts, and you want to put that money to work, private loans, right? And you secure that money with the collateral, and you do it through a legitimate process, right? You secure the money, right? Albeit you're using it from your trust. I just looked at one the other day. They used their trusts, and they let the administrator who was assigned through probate became the heir, or the beneficiary of that property. And she wanted to buy out the other heirs. So through a private loan, by way of someone lending them money through their trust, they recorded a interest against that property. So it becomes a lien against the property. And that's how you protect your money in the event that the person defaults, etc. So again, just told you another way to make money in real estate. Yep. Okay, so questions. What type of real property can be transferred using TOD deeds, right? So again, we talked about portfolio, right? What does that in fact look like? Real property being most condominiums, residential properties from 1 to 4 units, residential 1 to 4 units. It includes interest in stock co-ops. It excludes agricultural parcels greater than 40 acres, which means you get to keep the 40 acres of land and no more. So again, what types of properties can you use for this? Residential properties, 1 to 4 units. Again, this for me would be considered a simple estate plan. It's not complex. It's not involved. Again, I imagine someone who's got multiple properties definitely should have their team of advisors, as I've talked about, who are your top 5, right? Your team of advisors, your PCP holistic doctor, your insurance advisor, your financial advisor, your attorney, your real estate professional. All right. Okay. David says, loved it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Feeling love. Good stuff. So that's who it can be used for. Who can be a beneficiary? We're going to wrap this up, by the way, you guys. We're doing really good. I did not mean to go over, but you're here with me and I love it. So who can be a beneficiary? To whom can you transfer property to? Natural persons. Again, natural persons, right? Trust. You can actually, if you do have a trust, there's an existing trust. Grandpa may have done a trust back in whenever, and the trust itself has not been funded. It's called funded when you create a trust. You have not funded the trust with the property or the assets listed that the trust says, hey, Grandpa has, his primary residence at such and such. He has a bank account ending such and such. He has stocks at such and such, right? So if the trust has not been funded with those assets, meaning you've recorded those assets as the trust as the owner of those assets, then this is a way to take the TOD deed and designate the trust as the beneficiary. If Grandpa has a trust that he made back in 2001. It's called the Grandpa Living Trust dated 2001. you designate that as a beneficiary. And we know that, okay, we need to follow what the trust stipulates about what is to happen with the real property. Okay. Legal entities. This includes, and see, I'm a bit suspicious, but I'm really not. I don't want to insult or offend nonprofit organizations, but I did have someone call me and they were just taken aback, just blown away that a family member, excuse me, a family member designated that her home be donated to Goodwill, an entire house. Free and clear. Did she have children? Yes, she had children. She had 2. And that's why this had come up on my radar. They asked me like, hey, can they do that? Yes. Right here. We are reading it, right? Right here. You check this out. Legal entities being including nonprofit organizations, Goodwill, so they can name a charity as their designated beneficiary. Who else can they name? A designated person. That also means a caregiver. If they feel like this person has spent their last hour, last days caring for them, and it's a very sensitive and vulnerable time when someone is experiencing these end of days moments, right? End of life moments, if you will. And I've heard the stories that they'll designate the caregiver. The caregiver will, retire off of the person that they were caretaking for. So they can designate a family member as well. They can even designate a friend or a lifelong partner. So the answer is, when we started this, right? Can Grandpa's caregiver inherit his house? You're nodding your head now, right? Yes. Even though Grandpa has, children and grandchildren, yes. Because if Grandpa designated by way of the TOD to someone else other than family, then that's what it is. And you are in an uphill battle to challenge the estate for that. Again, can the owner change the beneficiary? You guessed it. Yes, right. I hinted, right? I started out my head already. Yes. What I do appreciate greatly, immensely about the TOD deed, it is a revocable, right? Yes, it is a revocable, however you say it, tomato. It is a revocable document. And the owner, here's this important part for us. The owner still remains control of the property during their lifetime. Guess what? The beneficiary is just that. It only takes effect when the person dies. So you're not giving power to someone else. You're expressing intent to avoid the probate so that it doesn't create issues for your estate or your family, the heirs, right? So this is great, because if you decide you've named someone in that moment in time, oftentimes life partners, you would name a life partner, and then things, you're in that moment of sickness and health type scenario, and they're not there for you, or whatever personal reasons you decide, Grandpa decides he no longer wants that person to be the beneficiary of his property, he can change it. All right. So let's talk about cons. The cons here, and I said we'll touch on this more in an episode next week called the Medi-Cal Recovery Program. The con here is the property may still be subject to the Medi-Cal estate recovery if the owner was a recipient of Medi-Cal benefits. Okay. Also, the con is, let's say Grandpa names their 10-year-old great-grandson, which is a minor. So yes, if the minor is named as a beneficiary, then the court has to appoint the custodian. Who will be the custodian to oversee? Because they're a minor, they're under age 18. Also, the beneficiary is held personally liable for all unsecured debts. Again, we talked about it. Mainly, of course, the mortgage. when we say personally liable, you're responsible for having to pay off, which is why we end up seeing in these types of transfers, if someone's not prepared, is why ultimately they end up having to sell the property to settle the debts. And then the last part here is if the owner is incapacitated, then they will be then the fact is, right? Incapacitated means not competent, not able. So they're unable to revoke or change the TOD. So if they do assign someone, and then again, you don't have a power of attorney in play to oversee changes and make changes, then it's going to stick, right? If they become incapacitated, which is why make sure you get your affairs in order. All right, listen. Whew, we made it through that. Thanks for hanging in there with me. It was really heavy, a lot of heavy concepts, but very important, I think, nonetheless. Important for us to have a discussion, family discussion, bringing it to the table, to the counter. Let's have lunch. Let's have breakfast. Let's talk, right? These are the things that you want to start discussing with family members. Otherwise, you are going to be in a situation where it's going to just be overwhelming and messy, right? Wonderful. Christopher says, great information. I am so glad you found that valuable. Pop quiz. I said, if you stick around, I will give you, you will be a winner of Ready, Set, Real Estate mug, right? This is a 15 ounce. And I've got the visors and hats on the other table here. So pop quiz, if you stuck in from the beginning to the end, right? I'm going to make it easy, right? Because there's a lot of information. So how many days does an heir have to challenge the transfer? How many days? Pop quiz. How many days does the heir have to challenge the transfer? Yeah, by the way, I do giveaways. Yes. How many days does the heir have to challenge the transfer? I'll give you multiple choice. A, is it 60 days? 60 days. Is it B, 90 days? C, 100 days? D, 120 days? Can't say that I don't care. I'll make it easy for you. Just need to pay attention. This is on the spot pop quiz, so forgive my typos. All right. A, 60 days. So how many days does the heir have to challenge the transfer? This is going to, it's funny, you're going to go through life and you're going to be like, gosh, Lisa asked me this. I'm supposed to know this. Yes, because if you're going to deal with a TOD or someone serves you or sends you a TOD for a loved one or a family member, then what is your right? What is your right to challenge that transfer? 60 days, A, 60 days, B, 90 days, C, 100 days, or D, 120 days. You know, when I do this with my youth groups and we're in class, I normally play my Jeopardy music. I don't have my Jeopardy music right now. So what will it be? I'll have one more and then we'll wrap up because I am inching closer to that time. One more and we'll wrap up. What's the next one? Ooh. Go to my notes. Shall I go back? Boom. Come on! Here it is. Okay, so make sure you're screenshotting it now, right? So boom, here it is. How many days does the heir have to challenge the transfer? It's 120 days. Okay, 120 days to challenge the transfer. Make sure you're taking those notes, you guys. When I say classroom style and I open up the show, I say classroom style, that means pen, pad, paper, text, tablet. write down those notes. All right, you guys hung out long enough with me. Again, plenty of opportunity throughout the show to get some freebies. Again, win your mugs, your visors, your shirts, all your Ready Set Real Estate swag. I appreciate you. Again, if you have any more questions, comments, you can always email me at lisa@lasuperagent.com. If you have not already received your freebie, send me an email to lisa@lasuperagent.com for your free CFPB Homeowner's Guide to Success. What I really like about the CFPB Homeowner's Guide to Success is there's a budget sheet, there's a worksheet, there's also resources about property retention. We did a whole series last November. I believe we started November through December. We did about an 8-part series on options on how to retain your property when facing financial hardship. So now that the moratorium protections have ended for those mortgages and car loans, they ended December 31st, 2021. Wells Fargo was one of the first banks that said that they will not start the NOD filings, meaning the notice of defaults, until end of January 31st, 2022. And so from my end, I'm seeing the filings. I'm seeing the notice of defaults, the notice of trustee sales. We talked about it on the last episode. I gave you websites on how to check out for those NODs and NOTs. If you're interested in picking up investment properties or looking for real estate opportunities, you can check out the trustee sale websites on past episodes. All right. You have been marvelous. We'll see you next week on another information-packed episode of Ready, Set, Real Estate. Have a powerful and productive week. Take care.